So today's sermon series, we're in the third series of this journey of stones. Now, you know, they say that it only takes a minute to find that special person. It takes an hour to appreciate them. It takes a day to love them. But it takes an entire lifetime to forgive them. Now, how many of you remember as children playing on the playground and you can remember those riddles and those rhymes echoing from the playground, such as liar, liar, pants on fire? Or how about, I'm going to pick on someone here. How about Carolyn and Bob sitting in a tree, Kissing? What comes next? First comes love. Then comes marriage. Then comes Jeffrey in the baby carriage. They didn't know I was going to pick on them. And then, so what about, you know, there's so many, I did not know this one. Maybe some of you do. But it's made you look, made you look, made you buy a penny book. I had never heard that one. But there's also one that we tell our children all the time. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. But we know that one's not true. Most of these playground phrases that children sing, they have a ring of truth to them, except for that one. Because we know from our own experiences that criticism can hurt us deeply. Yes, we tell our children otherwise, don't we? We tell them just ignore what they said. Don't pay any attention. Remember, sticks and stones may break your bones, but words can never hurt you. But we know better. We know it's not true. Now, someone once wrote a more accurate idiom, and it goes this way. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can sting like anything. That has a little bit more ring of truth to it. Now, the late Pastor Gersted, formerly president of the Good Samaritan Society, once remarked that the tongue is the most powerful muscle in the body. It only weighs about 1/4 pound, he said, but in a single moment, it can destroy a person's reputation or demolish their sense of self-worth. Today's scripture, it comes from the book of John. Now, as I've been sharing with you the different books of the Bible, the book of John is a gospel, and it is a historical narrative. The major themes you're going to find in the book of John is the supremacy of Jesus Christ. And Jesus is the only means of salvation. And key words that you will see throughout the book is Messiah, Son of God, and my favorite, salvation. Now, before we dive into the scripture, I just want to lay the groundwork here. We're going to encounter Jesus teaching early one morning in the synagogue. And the Pharisees, who were the religious party of that time, well, so the Pharisees, who were they? Well, they were developed, this group in the 2nd century, and they adhered to a strict observance of the Jewish written law. Now, the Pharisees, they were opponents of Jesus. They didn't like him so much. And they kept trying to entrap him and get him in trouble. So on this occasion, the Pharisees present a woman who was caught committing adultery. So hear these words. But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, and at dawn he appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him and sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. in the law of Moses commands us to stone such a woman. Now, what do you say? They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write in the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw the stone at her." Again, he stooped down and wrote in the ground. And at this, those who heard began to go away, one at a time. The older ones first, until only Jesus was left with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Go now and leave your life of sin." When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." God speaks to us through the reading of the scripture, and the people replied, "Thanks be to God." Now let's imagine the scene. Let's imagine the scene for a moment. I'm in the middle of service right now, and all of a sudden, let's imagine a woman gets dragged in and dropped at the foot of the altar here. Now this woman, it says she was caught in the act of adultery. So we can imagine that she was brought in barely clothed, if clothed at all. I doubt they really gave her a chance to get dressed. "Master, this woman is caught in the act of sleeping with a man who is not her husband. And the law teaches that a woman such as this must be stoned to death. What do you say?" A woman such as this. Hear those words, a woman such as this. Now, there is more than one way to stone someone, isn't there? And this week in your study guide and your bulletin, I just ask you to ponder the question, in the context of where you spend most of your time, how do people throw stones at one another? You know, words and the label being placed on her, a woman such as this. That must have stung. Those words as they landed on her ears. And if that's not enough, more slurs came barreling at her. She was being called trash, whore, and so many other disgusting words. She was being presented to Jesus, the rabbi, and threatened that they would stone her to death. But I wonder if the labels, the condemnations being thrown at her was not already a slow death. It has been said that religious people are the only army who ever shoot their wounded. And that is what is unfolding here in this scene. Imagine 200 eyes staring at you. 200 hands holding stones ready to throw at you. A woman such as this. But there was one set of eyes. There was one set of eyes that refused to look at her in judgment. Jesus looked at the ground and began writing in the dirt. Jesus refused to add his humiliation and refused to condemn her. Now, although it is important to note that he was the only one there who had the authority and was qualified to do so. What was his judgment? Jesus announced to the self-righteous crowd, "Whoever has never sinned, you cast the first stone." In other words, if you're so perfect, well, just let them fly. If your life is without sin, you start the stoning. Another question to ponder this week. Who do you think is the most surprised at the words that Jesus spoke to the woman? You think it was the woman, the Pharisees, even the disciples? You know, it's no accident that the older Pharisees were the first to leave. You know, as we age, we seem to become a little bit more aware, don't we, of our shortcomings? We become a little more aware of our failures. The most zealous Pharisees, the youngest, well, they finally dropped their stones at the feet of Jesus and left the temple. The rules, ladies and gentlemen, said that this woman deserved to die. But in the end, compassion won out. Love is more powerful than justice. Now, I ask you, and each of us has to answer this for ourselves, do we ever find ourselves relating to the Pharisees? The word Pharisee means people who have separated themselves. Do we ever, in one form or another, don't we sometimes hold ourselves apart from those around us? I mean, we put ourselves in a different class from those who steal or do drugs or murder or suffer addiction or even mental illness. Don't we some way hold ourselves apart? I'm afraid to admit, and I will admit, I've been guilty of this. Jesus determined, however, that this woman deserved another chance. Do we always offer that same chance to those who have done us wrong? Now, we resent the actions of the Pharaohs. We sit here and we say to ourselves, well, that's just horrible what they were going to do to this woman. However, we sometimes carry on that tradition of judgment and scorn and punishment ourselves. Have you ever interacted with someone that you feel has sinned or has wronged you in some way? And as you approach them, do you ever feel like as you're walking towards them, maybe you're carrying a bag of rocks and you're loaded and you're ready to start throwing? You feel justified because you were wronged. Do we need people in the world like the Pharisees? That's another question to ponder. Do we need people to make sure that the rest of us act properly? And who do you think functions in that capacity for you in your life? I came across an illustration that I thought was poignant and perfect for today's message. So the story tells of two friends who are walking through the desert, and during some point on the journey, they got into an argument, and one friend slapped the other. The man who was slapped and who was hurt, without saying anything, leaned down and started to write in the sand, "Today, my best friend slapped me in the face." They kept on walking, and sometime later they found an oasis. They decided to take a bath and sit in the cool water, and the one who had been slapped got stuck in the mire and started drowning. But the other friend saved him. After he recovered from the near drowning, he wrote on a stone, "Today my best friend saved my life." Now the friend who had slapped and saved his best friend, "After I hurt you," he says to his friend, "you wrote in the sand. But now you write on a stone." Why? Well, the other friend replied, When someone hurts you, we should write it in the sand where the winds of time and forgiveness will erase it away. But when someone does something good for us, we should engrave it on a stone where no wind can ever erase it. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to learn to write our hurts in the sand and carve our benefits in stone. The stone you hold today, hopefully you picked up one when you walked in. And now these stones that you picked up, both real or the stones that you're carrying that are imagined, well, perhaps they're already targeted for someone in your life. Those who have never sinned, then take them with you. Carry them home with you. But for the rest of us, I invite you to lay them at the foot of the cross as you come forward for communion. And I would invite you to lay them down, come this way and lay them down before communion as we come together as one church to partake of the bread and the blood of Christ.